Food Safety and Technology, Part 2. Food technology is the application of food science to the processing of food materials into safe, wholesome, and nutritious food. New technologies continue to be developed to reduce the risk of foodborne illness, improve shelf life, and increase food crop yield. Food preservation is one of the oldest technologies used by human beings. And the basic idea behind all forms of food preservation is to slow down the activity of disease-causing organism or to kill the organism altogether. Food preservation slows or stops bacteria's growth but does not destroy bacteria. The microbes can become reactivated when the food is thawed, rehydrated, or the container is opened. Most consumers preserve their foods today by refrigerating and cooking them. Refrigeration may slow the growth of some bacteria, but thorough cooking is needed to destroy the bacteria, and this is very important when you are using leftovers. The bottom line is, when in doubt, throw it out. There are a variety of food preservation methods being used today: pasteurization, sterilization, refrigeration, freezing, food irradiation, canning, aseptic packaging, and chemical preservation using additives. Food irradiation. Food irradiation uses minimal doses of radiation to control growth of organisms and insects in or on our foods, delay sprouting and ripening of seeds and plants, and sterilize foods. The Redura symbol on the right is the international symbol indicating a food is irradiated. It is important for consumers to know that irradiation does not make the food radioactive, and no radioactive residues are left behind. The foods that are approved for irradiation include spices and seasonings, sprouts, eggs, shellfish, beef, pork, and poultry, and fresh fruits and vegetables. Food additives. Food additives are used to limit food spoilage and to give a more aesthetic appearance. Additives are classified into two types: intentional food additives and incidental food additives. There are more than 2,800 substances that are intentionally added to foods, and there are about 10,000 other substances that enter the foods as contaminants during the processing process. Generally recognized as safe, or GRAS. In 1958, all food additives used in the U.S. are considered safe at the time were put on a generally recognized as safe list. Since then, the FDA, or the Food and Drug Administration, has been responsible for proving that a substance does not belong on the GRAS list. Substances may be added to the GRAS list if data about the use of the substance is safe under the conditions of its intended use. The Delaney Clause. The Delaney Clause in the 1958 Food Additives Amendment prohibits the use of intentional additives that have been shown to cause cancer at any level of exposure to humans and animals. Genetically modified foods. Some people may be surprised to know that the U.S. accounts for nearly two-thirds of all genetically modified crops planted globally. 92% of our corn, genetically modified. 94% of soybeans, genetically modified. 92% of cotton, genetically modified. In fact, 75% of the processed foods in the U.S. contain genetically modified ingredients. So why do we do genetically modification for the food supply? Well, crops are genetically modified to improve resistance to pests, reduce the need for pesticides, and increase the ability of the plant to survive adverse growing conditions such as drought, soil salinity, and cold. In addition to plants, animals are also genetically modified. Animals in the food supply are genetically modified to increase hardiness, increase feed efficiency, and to produce better yields. Additionally, most animals in the American food supplies are also fed hormones and antibiotics. And this is a major factor for some people when they think of the safety of the food supply. They're using a lot more free range and grass-fed, and because of consumer demands, a lot of smaller farms are responding to these needs. The concerns that have been expressed: damage to the ecology, unintended consequences of genetic tampering with the food supply, development of new allergens, insect resistance to genetically modified plants, as well as herbicide-resistant weeds and other environmental effects, intended or otherwise. It is important to note that FDA has refused consumers' demand for mandatory labeling of genetically modified foods. They believe the way a food is developed or produced is irrelevant information. Current FDA policy does not require labeling of genetically modified foods. In Europe and other countries like Australia or New Zealand, they have labels that indicate whether or not foods are genetically modified. They recognize the importance of some genetic modified foods, but they also want consumers to make an informed decision of whether to buy those products or some other alternatives. Pesticides. Pesticides are substances that are used to prevent, destroy, repel, or mitigate any pest. Pesticides are used primarily to increase food production and lower the cost of foods. When we use the word pesticides, it's a very broad term that includes insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, and rodenticides. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, allows about 10,000 pesticides to be used in agricultural crops. Pesticides can enter the food chain directly or indirectly. So the potential dangers of pesticides to humans, as well as animals, and also to some pests that we may consider to be valuable. There's also danger in the cumulative effects, and the threats to health are difficult to determine and isolate. Part of it is that we've been using pesticides so long that the soil is really, really contaminated. And if someone attempts to even make it an organic farm, it takes years, even decades, to be able to improve the soil. Evidence of groundwater and wildlife habitat contamination is growing. There are other environmental contaminants that we should be concerned of. In addition to pesticide residues, other potential contaminants include lead, mercury, arsenic, dioxin, cadmium, acrylamide, urethane, polychlorinated biphenyls or PCBs. A variety of environmental contaminants can be found in foods, and these may cause health problems, so it is important for you to find out which foods pose a risk and limit them in your diet.